At a private shooting range on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, a group of energetic young professionals gathered beneath a tin-roofed awning. Their voices rose over pulsing music and the sharp crack of rifle fire. Today's company-sponsored tactical bonding session promised adrenaline and Instagram-worthy moments. Most had never handled firearms outside a video game. Laughter echoed as they fumbled with rented ARs and took selfies in plate carriers they barely knew how to wear. Then an older man arrived. He moved alone, quietly, the sun casting a long shadow behind him. Thin and slightly stooped, he carried a worn canvas duffel bag over one shoulder and wore faded jeans, boots broken by time, and a plain long-sleeve shirt despite the heat. As he passed the group, one young man, smirking behind wraparound sunglasses, called out, "Careful, sir, this lane's not for beginners." Chuckles followed. The older man didn't stop, didn't speak. Just moved on to a quieter end of the range. He unzipped his bag. The instructor, halfway through demonstrating a grip stance, paused as he caught sight of the man's forearm. Ink, faded and weathered, coiled up his skin, a cobra wrapped around a curved kukuri blade. Beneath it, CCN, MACVSOG 1967. Silence bloomed. One of the professionals dropped his magazine. The instructor's mouth tightened. He'd seen that emblem once before. A Black Ops unit. Unofficial. Unspoken. The older man set his mat down. Slowly. Deliberately. No theatrics. It wasn't the way he moved that unsettled the room, it was the sudden shift in the air, like the heat itself bent differently around him. Nobody joked anymore. The music seemed to fade. He knelt by his gear, the duffel opening with the sound of old zippers, leather and metal worn from decades of use. No one knew his name yet. But they were beginning to understand they had misjudged the stranger who walked among them. Victor Reyes didn't need to speak. His presence said enough. The sun bore down as the group adjusted their stance, physically and mentally. Some shifted uncomfortably, others whispered. The instructor, Staff Sergeant Ian Keller, RET, stepped forward with a solemn nod and walked back to his station without a word. He recognized the tattoos. Not many had them. Fewer still wore them without fanfare. CCN, MACVSOG, that wasn't just military shorthand. It was a cipher that led straight into the dark corridors of American history. Victor set his old duffel gently on the table and began assembling his rifle. Not a flashy, tricked-out AR-15 like the ones clutched around him. His weapon was a battered CR-15, scuffed, custom-maintained, older than most of the men on the range. He moved slowly, but not from frailty. Each action was deliberate, practiced. Like he'd done it 1,000 times in places where noise meant death. The young professionals had resumed shooting, but their energy had changed. The laughter, the performative bravado, it was gone. One of them, a bearded tech consultant named Devin, muttered, "That guy looks like he walked out of a documentary." His friend, Mason, looked up from his phone, pale. He didn't walk out of it. He was the part they never filmed. In the distance, Victor fired 3 shots, sharp, clean, rhythmically spaced. 50 yards. 3 holes, so close they seemed like one. He stepped back, set his rifle down, and sat quietly under the awning. No boasting. No checking the grouping. Just silence. The instructor finally addressed the crowd. "I want to take a moment," Keller began, his voice steady but changed. "That man over there, he's not here for your benefit. Don't ask him for a selfie. Don't ask what he did. If he tells you anything, listen. If he doesn't, respect that. He served in MACVSOG, Command and Control North. That unit didn't exist on paper. They went into places no one else would go. Most never came back." Someone exhaled hard. Another lowered his rifle. Victor glanced at Keller but didn't speak. just gave a slight nod. It was near midday when the shift truly happened. As Victor rolled up his sleeves, the heat pressing harder against the range, the tattoos told the stories he would never speak aloud. A black skull over crossed arrows. The ghosted outline of a green beret. Marks that didn't belong to units known for ceremony or pageantry, but to those who had operated under shadow, in places where dog tags were sometimes left behind to keep missions deniable. A younger man, maybe late 20s, hesitated nearby. His name tag read Liam. He approached with uncertainty. "Sir," he said, voice almost cracking, "I didn't know, we didn't realize." Victor looked at him, then nodded once. "You couldn't have," he replied simply. Liam sat beside him, not too close. "My dad was in country. Said guys from SOG were the reason some of them made it home." Victor didn't respond immediately. Then he said, "A lot didn't." Another man, previously loud and laughing, now approached with an open canteen. He offered it, unsure. Victor accepted it with a nod, took a sip, and handed it back. "Thanks." There was something reverent in the silence that followed. Not forced, not ceremonial, just honest quiet. The kind that surrounded people when the veil of entertainment lifted and reality stepped in. Victor didn't expect attention. He'd come for the same reason he always did, to practice, to remember, and to be alone with those memories. But now, the weight of his past shifted slightly. These young men, barely born when the last American helicopter lifted off a Saigon rooftop, were looking at him differently. And in that gaze, something stirred, recognition, guilt, awe. Later, Keller approached. "Sir. Victor, if I may, would you consider telling them a bit more? Some of these guys, they could learn from you." Victor met his eyes. "They don't need stories. They need to know when not to talk." Keller chuckled lightly. "That, too." Then, as if the moment required an anchor, Victor stood, lifted the CR-15 again, and without adjusting his sight, fired 3 more rounds. The grouping, same as before. Absolute center. He lowered the weapon, handed it to Keller, and walked to his gear. As he packed, several of the men approached. One by one. No jokes now. Just quiet nods, offers of handshakes, expressions of gratitude they didn't quite have words for. And then came the moment none of them expected. From a bench near the edge of the range stood another older man. He'd been sitting in shadow, unnoticed. Slowly, he stepped forward and removed his ball cap, revealing white hair and a hard-set jaw. The hat bore a worn seal trident. He approached Victor and stood stiffly. "Sir," he said clearly, saluting. "Laos?" Victor returned the gesture. "You maybe run with men I knew." We rotated teams. The 2 men nodded to each other. No further explanation. None needed. Keller spoke again. "Victor, we've got the main lane cleared, if you'd like to." "No," Victor said quietly. "This one's fine. I didn't come here to show off. Just to shoot." Keller nodded. "Understood." As the afternoon cooled and the shadows lengthened, the group watched Victor walk toward the exit. No one followed. No one spoke. The sound of the wind filled the space where noise had once reigned. They had come for fun. What they witnessed instead was something sacred, a glimpse into a chapter of history lived not in textbooks but in the quiet strength of a man who had carried the weight of missions too dark to speak of. The old soldier had not come to impress. He had come to remember. And unknowingly, he left something behind. That night, the video appeared online. Uploaded by Devin, the same man who had joked about Victor bringing history to life. It came with a caption, 3 rounds. 1 hole. The old guy's a legend. It was a short clip. No face, just Victor's back, his hunched shoulders, and the quiet, unshakable rhythm of his firing stance. 3 rounds fired. A cluster so tight it looked like one. The sound of silence afterward said more than the shots themselves. Within hours, the video made its way to veteran forums, subreddits, and social groups focused on forgotten units of the Vietnam War. A user in a reenactment forum pointed out the tattoo barely visible beneath Victor's sleeve. Another, an ex-Green Beret, simply wrote, "That cobra's no joke. MACVSOG. CCN. Deep Recon. You didn't just walk into that unit. You were built for it." Soon, strangers began piecing the story together. Victor Reyes and CCN brought up little, mostly redacted records and fragments. But a pattern formed: Reyes, SOG operative, assigned to Command and Control North, active between 1967 and 1970. An invisible man from an invisible war. Victor didn't know any of this. Not yet. That morning, he followed routine. Coffee at dawn. A walk beneath the pecan trees. He wore a lightweight long-sleeved shirt, khakis, and an old canvas hat. When he returned, the only mail in his box was a utility bill and a grocery flyer. Nothing to suggest the world had noticed him at all. But it had. At the diner in town, a waitress set down his eggs and toast without asking. "On the house today," she said gently. Victor raised an eyebrow. "You're the guy from that video, right?" she added. "On the range. My brother served in Iraq. He saw the clip and he made me promise to thank you." Victor said nothing. He nodded, left a tip, and walked out. The murmurs followed. A letter arrived that afternoon, hand-addressed. No sender listed. The note inside read: "Sir. I mocked you. I watched you shoot. I saw what we didn't see before. I'm sorry. Thank you. Mason." Victor folded it once, placed it beside a faded photo in his drawer, and poured himself another cup of coffee. The next morning, Keller called. "You're all over the place," he said. "That clip? Over 500,000 views. Veteran groups are reposting it. Even some military historians are commenting. They're calling you the forgotten ghost." Victor exhaled slowly. "It's not a story I want to tell." "I know," Keller said. "But they're listening now. Might be time." Victor didn't reply. But he didn't hang up either. Later that day, a second letter came. This one included a photo, black and white, curled at the corners. A young man in jungle fatigues beside a jeep, grinning with a radio slung over his shoulder. "My father. Sog, 68. Never spoke about it. Died thinking no one remembered. You reminded me he mattered." Victor stood for a long time at the mailbox, holding the letter. Then he turned, walked inside, and opened the old cedar chest at the foot of his bed. Inside, the disassembled CR-15, a folded Green Beret, a laminated fragment of a topographical map, and a compass, scratched but still true. He took out the compass, sat on the edge of his bed, and watched the needle spin before settling north. Outside, the wind shifted. The pecan leaves rustled softly. In town, things changed. The hardware clerk, who had once handed Victor change without a word, now greeted him with a respectful nod. At the grocery store, a teenage cashier stammered out, "Thank you for your service," before awkwardly scanning a loaf of bread. Victor never corrected them. He had never worn the title, veteran, like a badge. His service had always been shadowed by secrecy, classified papers, and missions scrubbed from history. But the shift in how people looked at him, less curious, more reverent, felt like a breeze through long-closed windows. One afternoon, he received a package from an anonymous sender. Inside was a single object, a coin. Engraved on one side was a skull over crossed arrows, the SOG insignia. On the other, just 4 words, for those who knew. Victor stared at it a long while. Then placed it gently beside the compass in his cedar chest. He didn't go back to the range. Not yet. But he kept up his walks. He kept his rifle cleaned and ready. And he read every letter that arrived, dozens by week's end. Some were simple thank yous. Others confessed things, guilt from children of veterans, regret from those who never served, and memories from men who once wore the same patch and never thought they'd see it again. One letter came from a woman in Vermont. My uncle was listed MIA in 1969. We never knew much. Just a vague mention of MACVSOG and, somewhere near Laos. Your tattoo, it gave my family context. Even if you didn't know him, thank you for surviving. Thank you for carrying the silence. Victor sat on his porch with that letter, watching dusk settle into night. Across the landscape, cicadas buzzed and an owl hooted from somewhere deep in the brush. He closed his eyes and remembered the jungle heat, the squelch of mud, the iron taste of fear, and the men who had walked beside him into fire. So many had not come back. And yet, here he was. Quiet. Alone. Unnamed for decades. Until now. He took a breath and exhaled slowly. The wind picked up again, gentle but persistent. Somewhere behind his stillness, history had stirred. 2 weeks passed. Victor had not returned to the range. He had no desire to. The stir his presence caused had shifted something, not only in those who watched, but in him. The silence that once cocooned him had thinned. And with that thinning came a quiet unease. Keller came by again on a Wednesday afternoon. They're organizing a memorial event, he said, setting down a 6-pack. Hill Country Veterans Association. Want to honor CCN guys. They asked if you'd speak. Victor didn't look up from the sanding block in his hand. He was working on a small cedar box, smoothing its corners. I'm not interested in standing in front of microphones, he said simply. They don't want a speech. Just your presence. Victor gave a long exhale, then nodded toward the horizon. Do they understand what they're asking? Keller sat back in the old rocking chair. No. But maybe that's why it matters. They said little else that day, but the next morning, Victor pulled out his old uniform from a sealed trunk. The jacket, once a jungle green, was sun-faded and brittle at the seams. The patches were ghostly, the Special Forces arrowhead, a subdued American flag, and the black and white MACVSOG insignia. He folded it again, carefully, and placed it on his bed. That night, he had the dream again. A flash of jungle. Running silently through vines. The sound of a man breathing hard beside him, Sergeant Lou. A signal. A pause. The sudden crack of gunfire from too close. Blood on leaves. Then nothing. He woke before dawn, drenched in sweat. After coffee, he took a long walk through the hills. When he returned, he called Keller. I'll attend, he said. But I won't sit on any stage. Of course not, Keller replied. Just be there. The event was held at a small veterans memorial park on the edge of Fredericksburg. Rows of chairs under a white canopy, a table lined with worn photographs, dog tags, and framed commendations. There were more people than Victor expected. Vietnam veterans with creased faces and sharp eyes. Sons and daughters of the fallen. Younger service members. Even civilians. He stayed at the back. When the MC mentioned MACVSOG, a murmur moved through the crowd. Most didn't know the name, but those who did sat straighter. The speaker, a retired colonel, spoke briefly of the unit's shadow legacy, high-risk reconnaissance deep behind enemy lines, casualty rates above 80%, missions disavowed for decades. Victor listened without expression. Near the end, the colonel asked for a moment of silence. No names were read aloud. Too many remained unknown. But in the stillness, Victor felt them. The whole squad. Vulture Team. Lou. Doc Maris. Captain Breyer. Even short-timer Jenkins, who'd caught a frag in their 3rd month. When the silence broke, a bagpiper began playing taps. That's when Victor noticed a figure approaching. A boy, no older than 20, walked toward him. He wore dress slacks, a collared shirt, and carried a small folder. Nervous. Hands trembling. "Sir," the boy said. "You're Sergeant Reyes?" Victor hesitated. Then nodded once. The boy opened the folder. Inside was a black and white photo. A man stood in it, rifle in hand, jungle behind him. My grandfather. He was part of Team Raptor. SOG, Cambodia 69. I grew up hearing stories, but not from him. From my dad. My grandfather died before I was born. Victor took the photo, eyes scanning it. The face triggered something, half recognition, maybe memory playing tricks. A name surfaced. "Wells," he said softly. The boy lit up. "Yes. Corporal Thomas Wells. You knew him?" "We crossed paths. Briefly." The boy looked down. "I just wanted to meet someone who made it back." Victor handed the photo back gently. "We didn't all make it back. Some of us just didn't die." The boy blinked, unsure of what to say. Victor patted him once on the shoulder, then turned and walked away. Back home that night, Victor placed a single envelope on his kitchen table. It was blank. Inside, he'd tucked a letter he'd started months earlier. It wasn't addressed. Just a record, some dates, some names, a brief description of Operation Ivory Talon. The mission that had left most of his team missing. He considered mailing it. Then slid it into the cedar box. That weekend, another knock came. A woman stood at the door this time. Late 50s, silver hair, resolute posture. "I'm looking for Victor Reyes," she said. "You found him." She held out her hand. "Captain Elaine Kersey. Army Intel. I worked MACV back in '68. You came through my office once, Hugh, I think. You and Lou." Victor's eyebrows lifted. "I never forgot either of you," she said. "Back then, you ghosts passed through with no names. But I remember your eyes. Tired. Alert. Like you saw something the rest of us didn't." Victor stepped aside and offered her a seat. They spoke for hours. Quietly, carefully. Names passed between them like contraband. She mentioned missions, code names, lost routes along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Victor offered few confirmations, but now and then he nodded. Before she left, she said, "It's strange. We all tried to forget. And yet, here we are." Victor stood silent. "You reminded people we existed," she added. He shook his head. "I didn't remind them. They remembered on their own." She smiled. "Maybe. But sometimes, it takes one voice to make the silence mean something." That night, Victor walked out to the edge of his land. The stars above were sharp, countless. He sat beneath them with his dog tags in his hand. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like a ghost. Just a man. Still here. Autumn arrived early in the hill country. Leaves browned before their time. Mornings held a faint chill, and Victor's walks shortened. He began carrying a worn notepad again, jotting small entries, never more than a sentence per page. "October wind remembers," one said. Another simply read, "Jenkins, silent in the reeds." Keller visited less frequently but always with news. "They're planning a documentary," he said, setting down coffee one afternoon. "MACVSOG. A few former recon guys found that clip of you. They're gathering stories, oral histories, recovered footage. They want to talk to you. Victor looked away. Talk always costs more than silence. They're not journalists, Keller replied. They're ghosts. Same as you. Victor didn't answer. The next morning, a man appeared at his door. Mid-60s. One leg was a prosthetic. He wore a battered vest covered in faded patches and held a single dog tag. You Reyes? The man asked. I am. I'm Hank Ritter. CCC, you trained my team in '69. Fob 1. I owe you. Victor paused. Fubai. Ritter nodded. You taught us how to move without leaving a trace. Saved my life in Cambodia. 4 of us went in. Only 2 came out. And only because of what you drilled into us. Victor stepped aside. They talked through the afternoon. Maps. Units. Lost friends. Mutual silence filled the gaps. You ever think about writing it all down? Ritter asked as he stood to leave. Victor gave a soft chuckle. Much of it was erased. The rest is still too sharp. Maybe, Ritter said, but ghosts like us remember. That night, Victor took out a yellowed sheet of paper and began writing names in neat military script. Not explanations. Just names: Breyer, Lou, Jenkins, Maris. He folded the page and placed it into the cedar box beside the compass and coin. A letter arrived days later. Carefully written in clean script. Dear Sergeant Reyes. My name is Emma Taylor. My father, Corporal Daniel Taylor, went missing in Laos in 1970. I was 2. My mother always told me he was brave. I saw the video. Something about the way you stood made me think of him. I know this is strange, but, if you ever knew him, I'd be grateful for anything you remember. Victor did remember him. Taylor had been sharp. Kind. They'd crossed paths once during a recon drop near Ban Bac. Taylor hadn't come back. Victor wrote carefully. No operations. No specifics. Just fragments of memory. He was alert. Quick to smile. He watched the jungle like it might speak. One night, he asked me what going home felt like. I told him, it's not about the place. It's about who's still with you when you do. He signed it only, VR. More letters followed. Daughters. Sons. Widows. Men who once carried rifles through the dark. Many had never heard stories about their loved ones. Some enclosed photos. Some included nothing but thanks. Victor kept every letter. One morning, a package appeared on his porch. No sender. Inside, a worn recon patch. Faded, edges burned. A note read, from one ghost to another. You kept us alive. Later that week, a government sedan pulled into his drive. 2 men stepped out, suits neat but eyes respectful. Archivists. Department of Defense. Mr. Reyes, the older one said, your file is almost entirely redacted. But we're working under new clearance for historical preservation. Not public release. Would you be willing to speak with us? Victor eyed them. Why now? Because the silence is starting to cost us more than the truth. He invited them around back. They sat under the old oak tree. He spoke with measured care. No names of the living. No mission details. But truths, about the jungle, about the cost of erasure, about the men who came home broken or didn't come home at all. When they left, one said, you didn't tell us everything. Victor nodded. I told you what matters. The seasons shifted again. Victor walked slower. Rested more. One cold dawn, he opened the cedar box again and placed his green beret inside, beside the notes and folded names. Then, one last time, he returned to the range. The same instructor recognized him. Word spread. Rifles lowered. Conversation halted. Victor moved to the same lane. This time, no one laughed. He set his stance. Raised his CR-15. 3 shots. Each hole perfectly aligned. He stepped back, nodded to the crowd, and walked away without a word. Victor's absence from the range was noticed. In the weeks after his final visit, instructors spoke quietly about the old man with the cobra tattoo. They'd check his usual lane sometimes, half expecting him to be there at dawn, laying out his mat with monk-like precision. But he didn't return. Winter crept across Texas. The trees turned skeletal. The wind carried stories. In his home, Victor moved slower. He no longer rose before the sun. He still kept his routine, coffee black, walk to the mailbox, a glance at the sky, but there was gravity in his steps. The cedar box remained by the window. Its contents had grown: folded letters, old maps, the green beret, a strip of jungle cloth, and now, a dog tag on a silver chain he sometimes held as he stared into the quiet. Then, one day, a letter arrived. This time, the return address read, Texas Veterans History Foundation. Inside was a simple invitation. We're holding a remembrance ceremony for MACVSOG veterans. Closed to media. Families of the lost will attend. We'd be honored if you came, not to speak, just to stand. Victor considered it for days. On the 4th morning, he packed a small bag. No dress uniform. Just his old khakis, his boots, and a light jacket. He took the green beret from the box, dusted it off, and placed it carefully on top. The event was held in a private hall outside San Antonio. No banners, no flags, just a quiet stage, rows of chairs, and a long table covered with framed photographs of men who never came home. Some faces were young and grinning. Others were somber. Some were faded beyond clarity. Victor entered unnoticed. He sat in the last row, his posture upright, his eyes moving slowly across the photographs. One by one, family members rose to speak. A daughter read a poem about waiting for a father she barely remembered. A brother shared stories passed down secondhand. A widow described the last letter she ever received, written from somewhere near the border. When Victor rose, no one stopped him. He made no speech. He walked to the front, looked at the table, and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a folded slip of paper, the same one he had written weeks before, listing the names of lost teammates. Wordlessly, he placed it on the table among the photos. Then he stepped back, touched the brim of his beret, and returned to his seat. No one applauded. They didn't need to. After the ceremony, a woman approached him quietly. She was in her 70s, with tired eyes and a quiet dignity. "You were with my brother," she said. "You must have been Daniel Taylor." Victor nodded slowly. "He asked me once what it felt like to go home." Her eyes filled. "And what did you say?" "That it wasn't about home. It was about who's still with you when you do." She reached into her purse and handed him a small photo. "He carried this into the jungle. I thought it was gone forever. But I think you should have it now." Victor accepted it gently. It was a faded photo of Taylor, smiling with a baby girl in his arms. That night, Victor didn't return home. Instead, he checked into a small inn nearby and sat on the porch overlooking the hills. The air was cold, the stars sharp. He kept the photo in his hand. In the morning, he rose before dawn for the first time in months. He drove without a destination, stopping only when he reached an overlook above a wide bend in the river. He stepped out, stood at the edge, and breathed. The wind moved around him, not harsh but full. He could almost hear voices in it, laughs from a jungle camp, whispered warnings, radio clicks, the old rhythm of boots in mud. He stood for a long time, saying nothing, then returned to the truck. When he arrived home, Keller was waiting with 2 coffees. "They're naming a section of the archive after you," Keller said. "Reyes Recon Collection." Victor shook his head. "It wasn't just me. They know. That's why they're naming it for your team. You, Maris, Lou, Jenkins. Even Taylor." Victor paused. "That means something. Your history now, old man." Victor allowed a rare smile. "History's only alive if someone listens." Inside, he placed Taylor's photo in the cedar box. He added a short note beside it, "Ban back. May 1970. Still remembered." The next week, an email came from the Defense Department. A scanned field report had surfaced, partially unredacted. The report confirmed Victor's presence on an operation long denied. Recon Team Echo, Deep Laos insertion. 4 names. 2 survived. No medals. No debrief. Just coordinates and a single sentence, "Mission outcome, silence preserved." Victor printed it out and folded it neatly into the cedar box. Later that month, Keller drove him to a university lecture. The audience was small, military historians, students, a few veterans. Victor was introduced as a consultant. He said almost nothing. Just listened. But afterward, one student approached him. "Sir, was it true what they said? That SOG operated in Laos before anyone admitted it?" Victor looked the young man in the eye. "Some truths don't wait for permission." The student hesitated. "Do you think we'll ever understand?" Victor replied softly. "Only if you keep asking." He remembered.